everybody.
Hey, Brooke, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Guys, thanks a lot for joining. Whoever is on watching this webinar, first of all, thank you so much for attending the ninth session of our webinar series called Masters of Conversion, and where you get to learn from the masterminds of winning website experiences. My name is Anirudh, and I lead paid and organic growth at VWO, a full funnel experience optimization platform. And before I introduce our master for tonight's session, I just want to thank all of you who have been attending VW webinars in the past for your consistent support. We at VW strive to make your professional life easy by helping you understand the value of customer experience and how to make it better through an experience optimization program. The emails we receive post webinars like this encourage us to do better and better. So thanks a lot again. Our master for tonight is the UX research lead at WhatsApp Inc., the messaging platform which is taking over the world and we are all familiar with. And joining us all the way from California is Brooke Baldwin. It's great to have you, Brooke.
Thank you, Anirudh. I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure and an honor, and I'm so thankful for being invited.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brooke. So without further ado, I have a bunch of questions that people have asked us from various forums, and we can go over them one by one. I would love to hear your thoughts on these questions, and at the end, we can probably keep some time, maybe say 10 minutes for a quick Q&A for any questions that our viewers might have.
Sounds great.
Right off the bat, I think I would love to learn a bit about yourself and your professional background, how you got into UX research and how you landed up at WhatsApp.
Yeah, I feel really lucky. And the first thing I guess I'll say is I had no master plan. It's only when I turn around and I look back the path that I came to figure out how did I get here. So I've been doing research and design for a little over 20 years. While I was in graduate school in New York, it was during the dot-com boom. So the tail end of it, 1999, 2000, and I started working at startups while I was in graduate school. And at the time, there was no real there wasn't much differentiation between design work and research. So you did everything. So I got trained to do everything. And over the years, really, as I changed jobs, sometimes it was because I got laid off. After the dot-com bust, I got laid off like thousands and thousands of other people and had to figure out, oh God, what do I do now? So it just kind of had to go, it was sort of step by step. Okay, what's the most interesting opportunity? Sometimes it was well, what's the next job I can get? Because I need to pay rent. So sometimes these were not the most sophisticated, glamorous decisions that I made. But over time, one thing that has sort of rung true is I'm always kind of trying to learn new stuff wherever I'm at. Either I get to work with people who are smarter than I am or have different skill sets. And so I kind of get them to teach me things. So over time, it's just kind of, I've had these opportunities. So that's kind of it's not a very exciting story, is it? I just got this job and then, got that job. But maybe it would make sense for me to talk a little bit about how did I get started at Facebook and then eventually land at WhatsApp. Okay. So I had gotten a call a few years ago from a former colleague of mine who I'd worked with on a project at American Express, guy I really liked working with. And he said, hey, what are you doing? I'm at Facebook, come work with us. And to be honest, at first, I wasn't that interested. It's a big tech company. I'm a little bit older. I think that's for younger people. Instagram, that's for younger people. But then I started having conversations with them. And every time I had a conversation with them, it was sort of more and more interesting, what kind of stuff would I be working on? And they kind of pushed all the right buttons, and they recruited me for a team in London that would be focused on emerging markets. And as a researcher, this is the most interesting kind of research to get to do. To spend time in India and in Indonesia and Brazil and Mexico to really try to understand what's going on. And so it was a really amazing opportunity. And so it really became oh, how can I not do this? I was really sort of grateful for that. So okay, let's pick up and move to London. And so I did. And I worked on the ads emerging markets team for about a year and a half. And then after that, I kind of started to think like, well, what's the next? I need to be challenged. I'm one of those people who needs like, I got to be learning something. There's good times where it's a lull, but like, I need to kind of be learning stuff. And how else could I push myself? And I started to look for other roles within the company, because within Facebook, you can transfer teams. And there's a ton of opportunities. There's Calibra and Oculus and Portal and Instagram and WhatsApp and Messenger. So there's also all these places you can go. And WhatsApp had decided to start really building out a big, robust research team. And it was kind of the perfect opportunity for me. So it's such a big product in countries I'm so in love with and interested in, and maybe have lived in or have spent quite a bit of time in. And so the chance to be one of the first researchers to come in and start to build some of the foundational research was like just something I couldn't say no to. I'm very, very lucky to have the opportunity and be, sort of at the right place at the right time.
Amazing. And for a UX researcher, I think there's no bigger satisfaction to see your work reaching billions and billions of people. And I think that is one perks of the job and working at that scale.
It is, and it's a scale that like very few of us ever get the opportunity to work on. So like, absolutely. I never thought of it as a goal, because it's not a goal, because it's not so realistic. When I was working on the Facebook side, I was really focused on very small advertisers. So, the people who like run the Corolla that's like around the corner kind of thing, or like have like, maybe they sell food on a cart, like very small businesses. So that was not huge scale, but they could have large impact. But on WhatsApp, we've got over 2 billion monthly users. So then there's the pressure, right? Of like, don't get it wrong, Brooke, because you're going to mess it up for lots of people. But I'm kind of excited that I get to be part of this.
Great. I have a follow-up to that question. So you have been in the field of UX for almost the entirety of your career. So what is it about UX that keep you interested and keep you coming back to the job every day?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I have got the best job in the world because I'm someone who's a little bit nosy, and I'm someone who definitely likes to learn new stuff. I'll get bored if I'm just doing the same thing all the time. And it turned out that this is like a job that really meets those needs. So I get to learn new stuff all the time. Earlier in my career, it was about building my skill set. Oh, can I do usability testing? Can I learn how to do a card sort properly? Am I recruiting the right people? Let me get good at that. Let me get good at doing in-depth interviews and all these things. And then as I've gotten a little bit older, now it's about can I think more broadly? Can I have more vision with the kind of work that I'm doing? And so I get to be sort of tested and learn. So it's really a little bit selfish, right? That like, I get this sort of personal satisfaction. And then the other piece of it is like, I have this amazing job where like on paper, it's very sexy. And I'm one of the few researchers, right, that works at a company that will pay for me to get on a plane and fly for hours and hours and go spend time and talk to people. And sometimes I get to bring teammates with me who aren't researchers. So like the opportunity to bring an engineer with me who, is writing code for the product that we're working on, like for her to have a chance to come in field and talk to people who are using a product that she built, like it's very rare for her to have that experience. And there really can be life-changing for engineers or product managers or data scientists who I bring in the field with me. And they can really connect to like, and see like, oh my God, the work we do really does impact people. And so I love being able to like be a part of that and get to see it. It's a little bit like a holiday, like in terms of like, it's like Diwali or Christmas, like someone's opening a present and they're so excited. Yeah.
Amazing. So in this pivotal role at WhatsApp, how do you approach UX when you're building for everybody across so many personas and so many jobs that people do with WhatsApp. And WhatsApp is a classic use case because right from a small business to friends to people who are in a relationship, I think a lot of people use it. So how do you sort of approach when UX when you're building for such a diverse use case?
Yeah, it is this very important thing that we take incredibly seriously. And so we, as a company and as an ethos, are not trying to move the fastest to get the newest thing out. WhatsApp in particular, we will maybe even go a little bit slower to try to really think through things before we release them. From a research perspective, I have to think about how do I support that? How do I support the team to make the right decision? And so that means, with an app that has 2 billion monthly active users, my research, I can't just go like, I'll just go to one country for a week and I'll talk to like 20 people and then we'll know the answer, right? Because there's such diversity in our user population. And what we do is we try to build one product for every run. And so I am trying to make sure that we're talking to users all over the world, particularly in our key markets, in the key countries that use WhatsApp the most, because if you're a WhatsApp user, I want to hear from you. Like, what are you using it for? How are you using it? Because like how it's used in India could be very, very different than like how it's used in Turkey or how it's used in Mexico. And when I do that, like it's helpful. And then I'm also looking for like, where are there similarities? And the cool thing is that like, even if you speak Hindi or you speak Spanish or you speak Portuguese, you're still a human. And so there are behaviors that are quite similar from country to country. And so it's kind of my job to try to collect all that and see like, where is it different? Where is it the same? How do we, make sense of that? So it's very cool.
And so let's say if you come across with different needs or different kinds of users, right? And then you have to make a choice, right? You cannot put everything there. So then how do you sort of prioritize how do you use the real estate of the screen? What features take priority over other? How do you sort of decide that?
A lot of people get involved in those discussions, and those discussions can take place over weeks and months and even longer. So I may be the researcher generating the research, but we have product marketing that is looking at like market opportunities. And so they will come in with their own research and data. The product management team absolutely drives a lot of this discussion from their experience. And product marketing may come actually in the field with me. And they're thinking about that. The engineers have a seat at the table in data science. And so we're kind of all together, what we call cross-functional teams, having these discussions from different points of view and sort of weighing through the pros and cons of things and then prioritizing. And, what gets prioritized? Sometimes the criteria for that can change, but it's really going to be based on where's the biggest need, where can we have the most positive impact? Is it technically feasible? Are there government entities we need to work with to get permission to do things? So it can be quite complex, and there's a lot of people at the table. And then we just we'll go through to kind of winnow down what are the right things, and then something like a pandemic happens. And the world completely shifts. And so then as a business, we have to react and say, okay, what everyone's needs were 6 months ago might be quite different today. How do we then change gears as quickly as we can and try to focus on that? Because there's just some stuff you can't plan for.
Yeah. Awesome. And and I think that's the hallmark of a great product where different teams come together. And I think that's where a lot of great ideas get produced. And just from the seeds of initial ideas. Great. So yeah.
Can I just comment a little bit more on that? Yeah, like sometimes people will come to me as the researcher and be like, well, you know all the answers. What I know is, and what I'm supposed to know is our users and our end consumer users. Maybe we have businesses who use our platform. It's my job to really understand them and represent them, and then try to feed that in while the other parts of the team are coming together. So it absolutely is this very, very collaborative kind of thing. And it's like if one voice in that is missing, it makes everything a little bit less. And so it's great to have everybody's point of view because we can tackle problems from a lot of different angles.
Great, amazing. So on that point itself, so how have you seen the UX methodologies evolve over the years and its adoption across the industries?
Yeah, there's been a good amount of change, I think, in a very positive direction. So when I started out, UX wasn't even a phrase. It was your title was then information architect, and usability testing was one part of what you did. And there might be some other methodologies in there, but the first thing you ever learned was how to run a usability study, right? So you've got a prototype, or maybe you've got designs on paper, and you need to put them in front of people and ask them to do things and then see where the design works and where the design doesn't work. So I've learned to do a few more things than that from that time. And so over time, what's been great is the umbrella of UX really embraces so many different backgrounds and industries. So over the years, I've gotten to work with more and more psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists and behavioral economists. And so all these different disciplines kind of come and they bring their methodological approaches. And so like, oh man, okay, at this one job, there's someone who knows how to do this one thing really well. I worked with a woman years ago who wrote the best recruitment screeners I'd ever seen before. And so I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can from her. She just always got the best recruits. She got the best participants. And I was like, she's doing it right. And so over the years, as I get exposed to these people who have these different backgrounds, like my toolbox expands and expands and expands. And so from a selfish perspective, I've just gotten to learn a whole lot more. And I've seen the discipline grow and, you know, is trying to really codify. So having all those different disciplines in there can create chaos and disagreement about things. But I'm seeing more and more folks wanting to codify and bring like more best practices and structure to things. And so I think that's mostly a good thing.
Amazing. And can you share your personal experience of how you have seen companies adopt the practice of UX research? Because I think a lot of companies never put that emphasis on it, I think. And I think now more and more companies are putting users at the center of their entire project experience. So how have you seen that evolve?
Well, I mean, I could just tell you a couple of like a little stories from like early in my career to now. So early in my career, like I can remember like being in meetings with other teammates and them just being like, what do you do? Like to me, you know, like kind of being very dismissive of like what. And I was working on a project in 2000 for a big bank in the United States. And we were trying to build a large payment engine that would allow multinational and cross-national sales and delivery of products and goods on a very large scale. So like if you want to buy 100 tons of lumber from Brazil, you need it shipped by a Dutch shipping company and it's going to be delivered to Mumbai. There's a lot of different companies going on. So we were working on a payment engine for all of that. I remember being in a meeting with the guy who was managing the engineering team, and we were talking about the features that the product needed to have, and one of them was search. And he was like, oh no, search is too hard. Search is just like, that's going to be too hard for us to build. And I was shocked. I was like, but we're going to have people who have invoices and order numbers, you know, invoice numbers, order numbers, payment slips. They all have these different unique numbers on them, and there's going to be hundreds of thousands of them, and they're going to need to be able to find their invoice to pay or request a payment on and all these things. And he's like, no, it's just too hard. It could just be in a drop down. And like I think we didn't quite yell at each other, but it was this this allergy that he had that it was too hard to build. So that's too bad. And my perspective has always been, but like, how are people going to use this thing? Like, they're not going to use it if it's like so painful. I have really seen a shift over the years from like one of my favorite people to work with at WhatsApp is an engineer. And part of what I love about working with this guy is because he's so into research, because he's like, I want to build a good product. Like the more you can tell me about the like how to make this thing better. And so it's this incredible like embrace of the value that research can bring to an organization. So like that's huge swing from someone just like, no, it's too hard to you know, like, tell me more. It's lovely. Not all companies are like that, but that's sort of been the progression for me.
Great. I'm going to ask you a little technical question. So, how do you see formative UX research, and how do you see it different from the summative approach, and which one would you recommend to use to UX
Okay.
designers?
Yeah. So formative research versus summative research. It's not a one or the other kind of question or answer. So formative research, let me just give a little bit of like background definition for everybody. Formative research is about, it also gets called generative research. It's where you use research to generate ideas for products or services to build for people. Summative research, summary, is the kind of research you use to evaluate these things that you've designed before maybe you spend a lot of time building it out or whatever. Like you want to make sure you build the right thing, right? So they would be types of research that have many methodologies underneath them that you'd want to actually use on a full design life cycle. But if you have like, you're kind of trying to figure out as a team, like, well, we don't even know what to build. You want to do formative kind of research where you're talking to people about like, what kind of problems do they have when they are experiencing X, Y, or Z, or like, you know, that kind of stuff. So, because that's going to give you ideas, like what are the problems you could solve for this? But the summative stuff, usability testing, like any kind of product market testing, that kind of stuff. Click test, time on task, see how efficient and effective a product is. That's going to be types of summative research. So like I think you got to do them all.
Okay. And so let's say when somebody is starting out, you would more prefer to do the formative approach. And let's say once you get deeper into the UX cycle, then you'd rather use the summative approach.
Yeah. Because at that point, we're not trying to, if you've got a prototype or designs in Photoshop that you want to get feedback on, you probably don't want to generate too many new ideas at this point. You want to just evaluate, the stuff we've already done. Is it right? Is it not right? What needs to be fixed? Where does it break? Like that kind of stuff. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, a lot of our viewers who might be listening to us, they might be working for businesses who are still getting started, they're still new, or they might be launching new products if they are in established companies. So my next question is about them and for them. So user research is kind of very hard to get it right for new businesses, right? And are there any frameworks that you use or one that you have developed yourself to find answers to research questions that you ask participants, as in how can we get it right, get that research part right for new businesses?
Yeah, it's hard, especially like if you're just starting out. And my first answer is kind of like something's better than nothing. You do your best. So if you are building something at night on the weekends, and like you think it's going to work for people, try to find people in your friends and family community who represent who your typical user is, and then, put the designs or the prototype in front of them and then ask them, hey, can you just show me how I want you to try to buy a pair of shoes on this if you've made a small e-commerce app or something. And it's not going to be the most rigorous thing. That's okay. But you want to get people's input on things. And one key is that if you have poured your heart and soul into something, you're working on a product with the team, and you guys have really just been killing yourselves for it, you're going to be really invested in the kind of feedback that you get back. And there's going to be a real natural inclination to just want to hear good stuff. Know that that's normal, but you got to fight that. You got to fight trying to convince people like, no, this is how it's worked. You're supposed to do it this way. You kind of want to ask people to do stuff on it. And then this is the hardest part. You have to shut up. You have to be quiet. And you just have to let them go and ask them to talk out loud so you know what's going on and stuff, so they can describe what their thought process is. And like, go to people who love you enough to tell you the truth, because it'll be, boy, I can tell you the first few times I tested stuff that I designed and people didn't like it. It was soul crushing, and I may have cried, but maybe not. But that's part of the process. You can build a capacity to handle that kind of criticism, because the whole goal, right, is like, get some people first to test your products So they help you find all the mistakes before you release it. And then like everybody hates it. It's good to just have a few people. And I have turned to the point in my career now where I love the people who hate stuff in research. Like if they'll just complain to me, that's the greatest thing ever, because it gives me so many places to figure out how to make something better. And so I'm actually now at a point in my career where like I love the complainers. I think they're the greatest. They're so much more fun and interesting. But it can take a while to like deal with your ego to hear that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And that is, I think, what you just mentioned in the question before. That is the summative part of the approach, right?
Yes.
What if somebody is just getting started, or they haven't yet built a prototype, and it's just an idea? So how do you get started then?
I want to talk to people who that you think might be a potential user of the product, and don't try to sell them on your idea. Talk to them about where do they have difficulty in the process of whatever they're trying to do. So, for example, if it's like my kid, when they come home from school every day, their shoes are filthy, and I have to clean my kid's shoes every day, and it's a pain. Okay, so figure out about like, okay, and maybe you're trying to build a product to make it like so shoes don't get dirty so easily, or it's easier to clean them, or something like that. So you want to talk to people about, like, you talk to people who have like really dirty shoes all the time, right? What are the types of jobs that have dirty shoes? Go talk to those people and be like, what is the biggest problem that you have? And listen very attentively. People will tell you their story and will open up like a flower to you if you really are actively listening to what they say and respond to the things they say and follow up with the things they say. If you just have a list of questions and you just ask it, and then when they stop talking, you just go to the next question, you're going to miss things. And so treat these people as precious, because they really are, and pay attention to them. And so that will start to give you, and you want people to complain to you. So you want to try to make them comfortable enough. So they'll do that, because pain points, problems, complaints, that's very fertile ground for product development, right? For the development of ideas to solve problems, right? Because you got to know what the problem is first. So talk to people around who have the same problem or a similar problem to what you're thinking about.
Great. And after so many years of understanding how humans make decisions, what behavioral traits have you identified which are common across people?
We have a lot more in common around the globe than people think. We're really separated by the color of our skin, the language we speak, the God that we pray to, the candidate we voted for. But what I see is, like, I go into people's homes all over the world and I spend an hour or 2 hours with them. Like, we have a lot in common. For the most part, everybody wants to have a decent, good job, make money to take care of their family, have a little extra to go on vacation or have some nice things. Most people want to be trustworthy and to be like well thought of by their community. Most people want to help. Like, most people really have these very positive internal drivers. That doesn't mean that like everybody's like that. But when I'm out in the field or when I'm talking with other researchers, I refer to it as like, man, people have a lot of hustle too. Like, they're just trying to like do better for themselves, do better for their kids. And I see that over and over and over again without exclusion in every country I've ever done research in. And so, like, for me, that's very uplifting. It's very like comforting, and it creates a lot of love, I think, like inside of me for the world, because I see just how much, like, people are just trying to like do their best and make a little bit better life than they had, make a little better life for their kids. So I think those things are deeply, deeply universal,
So I think empathy as a skill is very, very handy in such situations. You understand the actual pain of the end user, and then try to emulate that in whatever product or service that you're trying to build.
100%. Empathy is this, it's such a buzzword right now, but it just means like, can you feel what it's like for somebody else? Can you feel what it's like? So I am born and raised mostly in the United States. English is my first language. I'm very well educated, and there's a lot of privilege in my life. So, okay, I have to understand that about myself. And to be a good researcher, understand, oh, here's all these biases I have. Here's all this cultural baggage I have, right? You've met Americans before. You've got a point of view about like, oh, yeah, you could tell they're American. Of course. When I'm coming into another country where I'm not from there, like I have to really think about how do I put myself in the shoes of a 19-year-old married woman who her job, she takes in laundry for the neighborhood, and she's got a young child she needs to make sure is healthy and gets a good education. She and I have very different life experiences, but it's really my job to what I call this, like, it's my like 90-minute love affair, or however long my sessions are with participants. It's just my job to kind of fall in like a very non-romantic love. I'm not trying to argue with them about what they do and how they have their life. I'm just really trying to feel what they feel and care about what they tell me is important to them, and ask them why it's important to them, and then just really listen. And that helps me build that effort, build that empathy. You know, it's and it is something that everyone can build. We certainly all have different starting points. Some of us it's easier for some of us than others, but like everybody's got it, you know.
Great. And during this professional journey that you've had, how do you suggest that businesses design their research programs to get the best value out of it, the UX research programs?
Yeah, it's so hard. I would just say the first thing is to just start somewhere and know that it's going to be a growth over time. You don't expect like your research program to be perfect at first. Don't expect every researcher to be perfect. Like that's not real life, and it's okay. We're designing for humans who are imperfect. And so you don't have to worry about building perfect products, but start somewhere. Get feedback as early and as often during the design and build life cycle as you can. And take it serious. Like take what people who use it say seriously. Like there will be times, right, where as a business you have to make a decision that like, yes, this is what would be best for users, but because we need to monetize, we need to make money on this thing, we're going to have to do it this other way. At least make those decisions consciously and being fully informed, I would say. And don't expect like you're just going to do all the kinds of research on every single product, every single time. It's not feasible. Start slow, and I would say the best place to start is if you've already got something designed or you've got some idea in your head, sketch it out on a piece of paper and start showing it to people, and then ask them like, okay, if you wanted to search for something on this, show me with your finger, where would you tap on it? You know, it could be a piece of paper, you know, and you could just see like, where did they put it? Did they tap where like you actually put the search? Oh, if they did, okay, that's good. That means that you probably put it in the right place and it looks like it's meant to look like. If they're putting their finger on lots of different places, it means like they're not wrong. You got to understand that. You've asked them, where do they think it should go? You have to take that into consideration then, that like, oh, however I showed the search, it's not making sense to them. Let me go back to the drawing board. You know, if you can come at it with that kind of attitude, you're going to be miles ahead of lots of other companies.
Great. Thanks a lot for that insight. I would love to also talk to our audience here. I think 230 plus people are listening to us right now. So guys, if you have any questions, do keep it in the comments, and I will shortly ask Brooke all the questions as much as we can take, probably at the end of the session. So before we go ahead, I think a lot of people who are listening to us, they might be starting out in their career, or they might be just growing and budding, and they're still learning a lot. So what would you say would be, let's say, the most important must-have tools in a UX research toolkit, without naming any specific names, but just in general, what tools should one have or use in order to do good UX research?
Honestly, the best tool you can have is a natural sense of curiosity. Be curious. if you have a drive to try to figure out like why are people doing this or why are people doing that? Like that's probably the single most useful tool you can have in your toolkit. So I'm going to say some things that are not like, go learn this software. I'm actually not going to answer like that. The next thing I think is the best researchers I know will try to know themselves really well and know their own mind and know their own biases, right? So, I've had to spend time, and I'm lucky that I have had the fortune of living in South America. I've lived in Asia. I've lived in Europe. And so I have been able to live in cultures that are not what I grew up in. When you live in a culture that is not the one you grew up in, you start to learn a lot about like, oh, well, that thing we did when I was a kid, I thought that was normal. They don't do it like that here. If you can start to identify like where you have biases, whether they're gendered, they're racial, they're cultural, those are the best researchers I know kind of know themselves really well and just know like, oh, okay, I just have a thing about that. I'll give you a funny little example. So in the United States, avocados, the fruit, some in America actually call it a vegetable, but it's a fruit. We all know this. In the United States, avocado is used for savory dishes. We put it in salads. We make it into a dip. We can put chips into it, but it's all used as for something savory. Maybe you put it with eggs, that kind of stuff. Fast forward to me spending some time in Indonesia, and I love avocados. So I learned one of the most delightful things. Indonesian culture and lots of Asian culture actually use avocado as a sweet. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I can have avocados for dinner and dessert. Eat it with condensed milk or turn it into a popsicle that's a sweet popsicle. And I didn't even realize I had this bias that avocados were only for savory until I got exposed. So it's like, no, they don't really have to be, right? And so as you kind of learn those things, it's really helpful. So the best researchers I knew, one of their biggest pieces of their toolkit is knowing themselves and knowing like, oh yeah, I've got these ways that I see the world, but that maybe everybody else doesn't. And can I be loose about that, especially when I'm doing my research?
Yeah. And also from that lovely story, one lesson for me was to keep our biases outside the research room. And because I think the users can delight you in more ways that you can think of. And they would come up with use cases that you can never even imagine. So
yeah, if you listen closely to what people are telling you, and they know that you actually care about what they're saying, they'll start to expose all kinds of thoughts and ideas and tell you how they do things that you kind of never would have gotten to before. And then you realize like, oh, okay, this is much more rich.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amazing. So let me take a couple of questions from our viewers here. So the first question is from Autumn. She says, I do CRO, but want to take up a junior UX designer role. Every job I go to wants a graphic designer who knows UX principles, but then can code and build tests. What's the best advice moving forward?
Oh, I'm probably not going to have very good advice because I share frustration, Autumn, with this idea that like you have to have like all these incredible skill sets. I'm one of those people who thinks that like design, research, engineering are very, very different skill sets. So when a job description asks for what we call a unicorn, and I don't use that that's not a compliment. Like I get kind of upset about it. It's unrealistic. And so it doesn't give people the opportunity to really grow into a specific skill set. That said, there is sometimes a lot of opportunity at smaller companies that kind of need someone who's like a jack of all trades. So if you can learn a little bit to kind of be dangerous, like over time, you'll be able to grow into things. So I think like smaller companies that need people to wear one or two or three hats, is good. It can be a good experience, but it really depends on what they're pushing you at. I would say don't try to learn something that you don't actually care about because it will show in your work. And it's like, I would say just don't like kill yourself for that. But this is very like American point of view, right? Which is like, and I'm way deep into my career and I sometimes forget what it was like when I first started out. And when I first started out, like I took what I could get. And, if I think back, while I was in graduate school, the first way I got into working at a startup was I took an unpaid internship. Like, they didn't pay me. I just showed up for free to do some work so I could get some experience. And like, it was hard. I didn't have any money. I had to like try to work a job on the weekends, and it sucked. But those things built over time. And so that got me in the door to work at a paid internship while I was in graduate school. I was like, oh my God, they're giving me money to come here. This is the greatest thing ever. And so my expectations were a lot lower earlier in my career because I knew I just needed experience. And I've never been, like, I wasn't too proud for that. Like, and I think if you're a junior person, be the best junior person you can be. You'll be a senior person one day. Don't worry about that. But if you can get a place that you feel is like going to be good and let you try things, that might not be a bad idea. I don't know if I answered your question, Autumn. Yeah, sorry.
So the lesson there is take what you get and then build on top of it.
I mean, the earlier you are in your career, the more it's about just getting your foot in the door. As you mature through your career and you start to decide what you really like, what you don't like, what are you good at, what are you not good at, where do you want to focus, then be more selective. I'm not saying like, just be thankful. Like the job should appreciate you and all the effort you put into it. And you should be, and you should feel that. But, I think I see like a fair amount of folks in the States who have no industry experience, but are very particular about what they want to work on and not work on. And when I'm sitting on the other side interviewing them, that doesn't come across well, because, with no experience wanting to be the one who calls, and then they want to be the one who calls the shots. It's like, but you don't have the experience and maturity to like make wise choices. Like you got to learn. So, there's that.
Okay, great. Moving on to the next question. It's by Andrea. And the question is, what tips do you have for researchers that face very small data, like, for example, 600 or below 15,000 views of monthly users?
Well, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Because depending on the context, that may not be a terrible amount. Could we have a follow-up?
Okay, maybe. Okay, I think the next question is by Karthike. How can we as a small business understand our audience when we don't have any data? I think it's kind of a similar question, so we can move on to the next one.
Wait, say the question again. How can we understand our audience when what?
When we don't have enough data.
When we don't have enough data. What it sounds like is, so when I use the term data, that can come in both quantitative and qualitative ways, right? And small sample sizes from a qualitative perspective, that's not a problem. It's the type of data that you have. So if you're talking about just like behavioral metrics on a platform, like that's quantitative data, right? And it can tell you what's happening on the platform, and you can see some things. You can see general trends. Where are people dropping off in if you're selling something, where are they dropping off in the funnel? If you can see that like people are getting partway through, clicking through products, and then they put something in their cart and then nobody converts or very few convert. Well, that data tells you there's something going on in that cart experience. So pay attention there. It may not tell you what. You got to use qualitative research to get in at that. And so get 10 users, 20 users, and bring them in and have them talk to you for 30 minutes or an hour, and have them take something through the cart and be quiet, and then let them try to see what happens, and then find out why aren't they converting. So you don't have to talk to the volume that I'm talking to.
Next question is by Suruchi, and I think that's one question that a lot of people might face or sometime in the user journey, is that how do you build for trust and authentic information on WhatsApp? Or it can be extended to, say, any other platform.
Yeah. Well, trust is this incredibly complicated topic, and I have had a keen interest in it for my whole time at Facebook and WhatsApp, and actually used to chair a monthly call of researchers, or over 100 researchers who were focused on different aspects of trust. And So I've done research on trust. I've worked with a lot of other researchers on trust. I've talked with industry experts about it. The thing I know about trust is that it is so hard and it's very easy to lose. So one of the things that I learned from another researcher that's really resonated with me and I think really makes a lot of sense is thinking about trust in terms of making it easier for your users to make sense of things that they feel are untrustworthy. So you want to, I'm going to get a little nerdy how I talk about this. I would flip it around and anchor it in the negative. And it's much easier to focus on what are the things that cause distrust and how do we eliminate those, right? What are the things that cause distrust in the technology or the other people on the platform or the content that's on the platform? What causes distrust or mistrust, and focus on those because those are solvable problems. You know, when we talk about trust signals on a platform, they can be different from person to person, right? But usually what people are looking for is like, is it a real person I'm talking to on the other side that has my best interests at heart? Are they authentic? Are they going to do what they say they're going to do? Right. And so if they don't, is there some recourse where I will be have some power in that? But it can really depend on the platform and what you're trying to do to figure out like what are trust signals. So it's really simpler and you can have more actionable things to do if you focus on making sure things that are untrustworthy, you could try to eliminate those.
Sure. I think next question, I'm sure you must have faced it as well, probably earlier in your career, not as much now. The next question is from Shirley Patrick. The question is, how can you make marketing include UX into the discussions? And by include, she really means include because typically there is somebody from UX who might be present, but their voice may not be heard as well. So how do you ensure that you include that person into the discussion?
Yeah, Shirley, that's a great question. And it could even be expanded to like broader, how do we make sure that like UX or research gets in part of any of the conversation around product stuff? I'm going to probably give a boring answer. The places I've been where I've been able to have the most impact, one of the things is it really comes down to like interpersonal relationships, like the hard stuff that takes a long time. Part of the ways I've tried to help with that is, okay, well, what can if the marketing team is like, yeah, Brooke, go away, then maybe part of what I can do is figure out like, okay, well, what is the marketing team up against? And maybe do I represent something that like is scary to them? And so let me try to just even understand why are they having the approach that they're having that may not be including me? Because I want to be included. So like, what can I understand about where they're coming from, right? And then also like, can I demonstrate value? And can I solve some problems for them? Because there's a bunch of stuff that market research can do, right? Opportunity sizing, product market fit. But there's stuff that you like UX research can bring to the table that others can't. And it's like, but what are all the nuances of it? And, if we do this, then what, kind of reaction will people have? And so can I bring something that's valuable to them to the table and trying to sort of slice that in? At some companies, you need to find a champion who's more senior, who you can kind of get to be an ally to get involved. Maybe it's, more senior people have to talk to each other to say, hey, everybody needs to play nice together. It can really run the gamut. And I think a lot of it's predicated on the culture of the organization that you're in, because some are just like, they've got these barriers and walls about like teams don't work together at all. Marketing does marketing, does engineering. We just throw stuff over the wall. And if that's the case, it's a lot harder. You probably have to, it might be a more hierarchical organization. And so you might need to kind of go up the chain to be able to go over and back down the chain. I don't know. That's probably a terrible answer. Sorry.
Okay. The next question is from Nahush. The question is, how do you do user research with enough confidence in a niche market? And it's not really less number of users, but really a niche market where it might be difficult to find users to talk to and test with.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm glad it got asked because it's happened to me before too. So, like at WhatsApp, like we've got a big user base, but I've worked on products that are very niche, that have very, maybe the user of the product is a chief financial officer at a company, and they're notoriously difficult to recruit because like they make a lot of money, so you can't like offer them a bunch of money, or even they have to like they're not allowed to be paid because of like whatever kind of laws are going on. You're like, how do I find this? And so like, beg, borrow, and steal. But then you can also think about like proxy or representative users, right? So if I can't get my hands on a CFO, and I'm just making that up as the niche, person or group you need to get at, then who is there someone maybe a little bit down the chain, but he'll still pretty senior that I could kind of get at, and it widens my circle, it widens my essentially it's a recruiting pool that we think about. And so what roles would have like behaviors? So if you're looking for, I need someone who's a decision maker for X, right? So think about, well, that's always a CFO. Okay, well, if you can break it down into, well, they're a decision maker for X, or they are in charge of Z amount of budget kind of thing. Maybe you can start to look at breaking those things down, and it might widen your pool so you get more representative, not exact. That's really the way we do it. There's also another way to snowball. If you've ever heard of snowball recruiting, so if you can find one person who represents like the type of people you need, this I think comes from anthropology. You will ask the participant, like, we'd like to speak with other people. Could you tell me 3 or 4 other people who you think might, that who do this kind of thing, and ask if we can contact them, please. So it's like a snowball, as it rolls, it gets bigger and bigger. That's why it's called snowball recruiting. So that's some ways to kind of do it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Next question is from Kuda. The question is, do you also do quantitative research like A/B testing for new features?
Yeah, so I am considered in the Facebook, WhatsApp world a qualitative researcher, and we have kind of our own definitions of that. I do what I call baby quant. And so I'll do A/B testing, time on task testing, first click testing, to find out, like, if we've got two. One thing I did last year in a bunch of African countries is we had an advertisement type, and we had to figure out, or maybe it was a couple years ago, what the right label needed to be on a call to action button. And we had a couple different ideas, but like we were stumped. We're like, we're not sure which one's gonna like get more clicks and increase more revenue. So we A/B tested that. And I put a little bit of qualitative type questions in with that research. So not only could we figure out, when I asked people, to click on what they would click on to do X, Y, or Z, you could see first place they click, that tells me it's better. And we did a couple other things. But then I would ask them, like, if you had to compare these two, like, which one do you prefer and why? Because that why is really, really useful. If we have to make other design decisions after we've done this research, that is that's like golden information for us to pull from to make wise design decisions afterwards, or development decisions.
Yeah. We have a lot more questions, but in the interest of time, I think we can take 2 or 3 more. So I think the next question is from Ankur Sharma. The question is, what books are you currently reading, and what are some of the favorite books around UX that you would recommend?
Oh, okay. I read a lot of fiction for fun. So right now I'm reading a bunch of science fiction stuff that's probably not that, it's not everybody's thing. I will say for UX, when it comes to UX, a few things I would really recommend. Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think. It's a really easy book to read if you're getting started and you want to figure out, like, how do I run a usability test? I just think he has a lovely way of breaking things down. And he's also a really nice person. At a conference one time, I gave a presentation. This was years ago. I was super nervous, and he was in the audience, and I saw him. And he came up to me afterwards, and he spoke to me, and he gave me a huge compliment. And so he's just a lovely person too, and is very encouraging of like people getting started in their career. So I think very highly of him, and I like the way he breaks things down, and he makes it much less complicated than it needs to be. So Don't Make Me Think or Rocket Surgery, his 2 books are good. On the other end of the spectrum, like if we wanted to get like kind of really nerdy stuff, I'm really, for the last few years, I've been quite interested in behavioral economics. And so I would say pretty much anything that Richard Thaler or Cass Sunstein have written, but Richard Thaler wrote Nudge, and Cass Sunstein has been a co-author with him on a bunch of stuff. the way he writes is really accessible and you can understand. He's talking about decision making under uncertainty. How does the brain make decisions? So you can design things that take advantage of how people's brains actually work and they want to make decisions. If you want to go a little bit deeper, then go to Danny Kahneman. He wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, but don't start there because it's like a kind of hard book to read. Those are just off the cuff suggestions.
Great. The next question is from Magdalena. The question is, how do you measure?
Wait, no, let's go back. I'm so sorry. I want to stop. I want to rethink my answer because there's a great woman and she happens to be Indian American, Sheena Iyengar. She is a research scientist at Columbia University who has written a bunch of books about choice and decision making. And she is one of the sharpest minds when it comes to understanding. She's a psychologist by training, Sheena Iyengar. She's written a couple of different.
TED Talk. Does she also have a TED Talk?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I might have.
Yeah, she's got a couple amazing TED Talks. I've actually seen her talk live. She's like so sharp and just such a crisp mind. Like I really love her. So I want to recommend anything she's done.
Great. I think the next question is from Magdalena. The question is, how do you measure your product design and what are the best practices that you would recommend?
Well, sorry, the question is, how do we measure the product design?
The product design and what are the best practices that you would recommend?
Well, so we look at like a few different things because I think essentially what you're asking, right, is it good design? Is it the right design? And so as we're going through the design life cycle and we're doing maybe usability testing on it, we're looking at factors like ease of use, satisfaction. Like, do people use it and walk away going like, yeah, I got it done, but I hated it? Or, no, that was easy, I like that. Or it was, describing it as simple to use or not. And not all products have to be simple to use. You can build really complicated software that has to be complicated for a reason, like flying a helicopter. But, and so there may be sort of time on task, like how effective people are. Can they actually get the task done? And then measures of efficiency, how long it takes them to get things done, and then satisfaction. How good did they or not good did they feel about the process they had to go through to finish the task? So there's all those kinds of things, and you can keep doing those. Once we release a product, though, into the market, we're looking at stuff like if it's like an app, how many people are downloading it, how many people are using it daily, weekly, monthly, how many complaints are we getting, and what is the nature of the complaints we're getting of things to help us understand, like, we just released something and then all of a sudden we got more trouble tickets that come up and like it's the same theme and like we're hearing lots of people don't like this. We got to go back and figure out kind of what went on. It's really going to be somewhat product perspective, what was the word? Product specific, because we're going to tie these to business outcomes, right? So the business may say, these are our goals, their revenue goals, their active user goals, their satisfaction goals. And so we're going to be measuring against all of those and monitoring and then, looking at them within a threshold to make sure that like we're managing all of that stuff.
Amazing. And there are a lot more questions than we can answer, and I can just scroll and scroll and scroll. I think there are 40, 50 more questions. So Brooke, we don't have time to cover all of them in the session, but is there any way that these people can reach out to you in case they have questions?
They can. I will just say, be gentle with me. I get a lot of requests on LinkedIn, and I will do my best to get to you as soon as I possibly can. But like, if you want to reach out to me, make sure you have a crisp, sharp question. And I will do my best. You have to imagine with COVID-19, WhatsApp is a little bit busy right now. So my day job is keeping me a little bit busy. But you can also just follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me there. That would be great. Happy to. That would be good.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brooke, for the session. And thank you all the attendees, 200 plus people who joined us for the session. I'm sure they got to learn a lot from you and I got to learn a lot from you. So thanks a lot for that. And guys, keep tune in for the next session of Master of Conversions. Check your email boxes. You will get a notification very soon. And thanks a lot for watching. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Anirudh. I really appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks, Brooke. Bye-bye.
Bye.